Let's practice with absolute relative change. First, let's complete the table showing fair market rental rates for Terre Haute over the years. Now, remember that absolute change is found by taking the new value minus the old value, and then relative change is found by taking the new minus old, which is the absolute change, and dividing by the old. So let's do 2005 here together. So for 2005, the new value would be 522, and the old is the previous 5-year, which is 433. So that makes my absolute change $89. And then we divide by the old, which is 433, so 89 divided by 433, and that gives me a relative change of 0.206. All right, do the next two. All right, so when we take 2010 and we subtract 610 minus 522, we get 88. Divide by 522, we get 0.169, and then same idea for 2015. All right, let's move on and do some questions. So we have that table. Over what time period did Terre Haute have the greatest increase in free fair market rental rates? Greatest increase. Well, from 2000 to 2005. You can see not only do we have the largest absolute change, but we have the largest relative change. So 2000 to 2005, that 5-year period is the greatest. And number 2, use the 2015 absolute relative change values in a meaningful sentence or two. Okay, so we're using these two here. The fair market rental rates in Terre Haute increased, this is positive, so we know they increased $68 or 11.1% from 2010 to 2015. Now, I like always to say when you're writing meaningful sentence, you want to talk about what? What are we talking about? In this case, fair market rental rates in Terre Haute. What happened to them, right? We need an increase. So, like, what's the math? What happened? And we need a time period. So, what happened to that? And what's the time period that we're talking about? If you have those three pieces, life is going to be pretty good here. Number 3, we're looking at this bar graph. What was the estimated change? That should be an S. Estimated change in the population of the state of Indiana in 2012. Is this an absolute or a relative change? Okay, so 2012 is here. This is the year 2012. So if we look up at this spot, and we bring as far over as we can. Ugh, that's really hard. Okay, so I'm going to say it's roughly 20,000. That is the annual change in thousands. So 20,000. And that is an absolute change. Because remember, absolute is a number where relative change is generally given as a percent. So because we are talking about a numerical change here, 20,000, that is where we get the absolute change. If the population in 2011 was 6,516,922, what was the population in 2012? Well, if I say we had an increase of 20,000, then we would just add 20,000 to this. So in 2012, the population would be 6,536,922. And that's how we do that. Let's move on. Write a meaningful sentence interpreting the relative change in the population of Indiana for 2012. Well, relative change, again, is absolute change over the old amount. So if we're talking about 2012, that means 2012 is new. That means 2011 is old. So we know the absolute change is 20,000 because that's the annual change. And the old amount is 6,516,922. We get a 0.003, which if we change that to a percent by multiplying by 100, we get 0.3%. The population of Indiana increased 0.3% from 2011 to 2012. Depending on how you look at it, you might think that 20,000 sounds really big, but 0.3% sounds really small. So it really depends on how you talk about numbers and whether or not they sound big or small. Let's do one more here, an A and B. Number 6, to track the percentage of children receiving flu vaccinations, the CDC collects data early in the flu season and at the end of the flu season. Early in the 14-15 flu season, 42% of children had been vaccinated for that year. By the end of the year, 59.3% had been vaccinated. Let's calculate the absolute change and write your answer in a meaningful sentence. So the end of the year would be the new, the beginning of the year would be the old. So absolute change is new minus old, or final minus initial. I don't care how you think about it. But we've got 59.3 minus 42.0, which gives me a 17.3. And that is percentage points. So what is the meaningful sentence? Throughout the 14-15 flu season, the percentage of children vaccinated increased 17.3 percentage points. Remember that absolute change is like numbers, so percentage points, not percent. If we talk about a 17% increase, that's relative change. So when you're talking about this, we want to talk about percentage points. Now, part B is going to get into the relative change. So relative change is absolute change over the old. So we know that the relative change, the absolute change is 17.3, and the old value, which is the beginning of the flu season, was 42. So when I divide those, I get 0.41, which is 41%. My meaningful sentence: the percent of children vaccinated during the 14-15 flu season increased 41% from the beginning to the end of that season. I don't know, but sometimes sentences are hard. But that's the idea. What are we talking about? What happened? The increase of 41%. When? What was the time period? It was the 14-15 flu season from beginning to end. So make sure you have all of those pieces in when you are writing a meaningful sentence.